Giulia Trentano was 29 years old when her life changed in May 2023. She was a successful real estate professional, a loving daughter and sister, and an expectant mother who was 7 months pregnant at the time of her death. Her case became a catalyst for widespread protests across Italy, with her sister Carla speaking publicly about the need for stronger protections for women in dangerous relationships. Giulia's story represents not just one tragic loss, but the ongoing struggle against domestic violence that affects countless families. The investigation that followed her disappearance revealed a shocking pattern of deception, manipulation, and premeditated violence that had been building for months. Her case ultimately led to a life sentence and important discussions about preventing similar tragedies. Please like, subscribe, and share this video to help spread awareness about these critical issues affecting women everywhere. Giulia's story begins with a childhood in Naples that gave her the strength and independence she would carry throughout her life. Giulia Trentano was born on May 2, 1994 in Naples, Italy. She grew up in a close-knit family that provided unwavering support and love throughout her childhood. Her parents instilled in her the values of independence and self-confidence from an early age, creating a foundation that would serve her well in her adult life. The family embraced modern ideas while maintaining strong connections to traditional customs, offering Giulia both progressive thinking and cultural roots she could always return to for comfort and guidance. During her school years, Giulia excelled academically, particularly in the arts. Her interest in real estate developed naturally from her fascination with architecture and her entrepreneurial spirit. She pursued higher education in the field, where her analytical mind and exceptional communication skills quickly distinguished her from her peers. By the time she reached 25, Giulia had established a solid reputation in Naples' real estate market, earning respect from colleagues and clients alike. However, success in her hometown wasn't enough for Giulia. She felt increasingly restless with the limitations of the local market and yearned for greater opportunities that only a major metropolitan area could provide. Stories from friends who had relocated to larger cities painted pictures of expanded possibilities and professional growth that Naples simply couldn't match. In late 2020, Giulia made the pivotal decision to relocate to Milan. She viewed this move as more than just a career change. It represented freedom, new connections, and the professional advancement she had been seeking. The decision wasn't made lightly, but Giulia was determined to pursue the opportunities that awaited her in Italy's business capital. The preparation for her departure was both exciting and emotional. Giulia packed her belongings carefully, said goodbye to family members who had supported her dreams, and bid farewell to friends who understood her ambitions. As she prepared to leave Naples, Giulia carried with her the strong foundation her family had provided, the skills she had developed, and the hope that Milan would become the backdrop for the next successful chapter of her life. Giulia quickly adapted to Milan's competitive real estate market, embracing the bustling city environment with determination and enthusiasm. The fast-paced lifestyle suited her ambitious nature perfectly. She made new connections with industry professionals, attended networking events regularly, and began closing deals that established her reputation in the metropolitan market. Her analytical skills and communication abilities, which had served her well in Naples, proved equally valuable in Milan's more demanding business landscape. Despite her professional achievements, Giulia experienced an underlying sense of loneliness. Success in her career provided satisfaction, but she yearned for personal fulfillment beyond work accomplishments. The desire for meaningful relationships and emotional connection became increasingly important as she established herself in the new city. During a work celebration at a Milan bar, Giulia met Alessandro Impaciello. He worked as a bartender at a fancy hotel club, where his natural charm and engaging personality made him popular among patrons. Alessandro possessed an ability to make Giulia feel relaxed and forget about work stress. offering her a welcome respite from her demanding professional life. Their initial courtship progressed smoothly and appeared promising. Alessandro took Giulia on romantic dinners throughout the city, and they enjoyed evening walks through Milan's historic streets. Their conversations often centered on future plans and shared aspirations, creating an atmosphere of optimism and connection that Giulia found deeply appealing. During their developing relationship, Alessandro revealed that he had a son from a previous relationship. He presented this information as part of his past that he had moved beyond, framing it as a closed chapter that wouldn't affect their future together. Giulia accepted this revelation without concern, viewing it as evidence of Alessandro's honesty and maturity. After just a few months of dating, Giulia and Alessandro decided to move in together. Giulia felt confident that she had found her life partner, someone who understood her ambitions while providing the emotional support she had been seeking. However, beneath Alessandro's charming facade lay hidden complexities that would soon begin to surface, threatening the foundation of their seemingly promising relationship. Alessandro Impazziello was born in 1993 and had mastered the art of creating an image of sophistication and success, despite holding a modest bartending position. His work environment at an upscale hotel bar, surrounded by wealthy clientele and business elites, allowed him to cultivate the appearance of someone naturally accustomed to luxury and high society interactions. His colleagues viewed Alessandro as charming, but noted his somewhat shallow nature. While he maintained an entertaining and relaxed demeanor that made him popular in social settings, those who worked closely with him observed his reluctance to genuinely open up or form deeper personal connections. This superficial charm masked a more complex and troubling personality. Early warning signs began appearing after Giulia and Alessandro moved in together. What initially seemed like playful teasing gradually transformed into cruel mockery that targeted aspects of Giulia's identity and background. Alessandro made derogatory comments about Giulia's southern Italian origins, using regional stereotypes to diminish her confidence and self-worth. He publicly ridiculed things that held meaning for her, dismissing her values and interests with increasing frequency. The emotional manipulation followed a recognizable pattern that created psychological instability in their relationship. Alessandro would display periods of anger over trivial matters, creating tension and conflict without apparent cause. These episodes were followed by sudden returns to his charming personality, leaving Giulia constantly uncertain about his true feelings and intentions. The unpredictable cycle kept her off balance and unable to establish emotional security. Most significantly, Alessandro maintained a secret relationship with Algra, a younger multilingual colleague from his hotel workplace. This deception represented the most devastating aspect of his manipulative behavior, as he successfully compartmentalized his life to maintain simultaneous relationships with both women. Alessandro told Algra that Giulia was merely a temporary roommate who would be moving out soon, completely misrepresenting the nature of their romantic relationship and shared living arrangement. He presented himself as single and available, while continuing to live with Giulia and maintain their relationship as boyfriend and girlfriend. This elaborate deception required careful coordination and constant lies to both women. Alessandro demonstrated remarkable ability to maintain separate narratives, making different promises and commitments to each partner, while ensuring neither discovered the other's existence. His behavior revealed a master manipulator capable of extraordinary deception, setting the foundation for the tragic consequences that would inevitably follow when his carefully constructed lies began to unravel. Alessandro's web of deception became increasingly complex as he maintained simultaneous relationships with both Giulia and Algra. He successfully presented himself as single to Algra while explaining his continued cohabitation with Giulia as a temporary arrangement that would soon end. Each woman remained completely unaware of the other's existence, as Alessandro skillfully compartmentalized his life and played different roles with each partner. The deception deepened significantly when both women became pregnant around the same time period. Julia discovered her pregnancy at the end of 2022, while Algra's pregnancy became known in early 2023. These overlapping pregnancies created a crisis that threatened to expose Alessandro's carefully maintained double life and force him to confront the consequences of his actions. The two women's reactions and Alessandro's responses to their pregnancies revealed his calculated and manipulative nature. Julia was determined to keep her baby despite the ongoing difficulties in their relationship, demonstrating her independence and strong maternal instincts. Her decision reflected her core values and commitment to taking responsibility for the life she was carrying. In contrast, Alessandro successfully convinced Algra that ending her pregnancy was the best decision for both of them. He accompanied her to the medical procedure, positioning himself as a supportive partner, while secretly viewing her compliance as a convenient solution to his complicated situation. Julia's determination to continue her pregnancy represented a permanent complication that Alessandro couldn't easily dismiss or control, unlike Algra's situation, which he was able to resolve according to his preferences. Julia's pregnancy threatened the foundation of his deceptive lifestyle, as a child would create lasting connections and responsibilities that couldn't be manipulated away. This fundamental difference in the women's responses to their pregnancies highlighted Julia's independence and strong will, qualities that began to threaten Alessandro's ability to maintain his deceptive lifestyle. Her unwavering commitment to her unborn child created mounting pressure that would eventually push Alessandro toward increasingly desperate measures to regain control of his carefully constructed world. When Julia refused to have an abortion, Alessandro realized he was losing control of the situation that threatened to expose his carefully constructed double life. Her determination to keep the baby represented a permanent complication he couldn't manipulate or dismiss through his usual deceptive tactics. Faced with this challenge, Alessandro began researching methods of harming people without detection, spending considerable time online exploring various dangerous substances and their effects. His initial research covered a wide range of options, including everyday household chemicals, plant-based poisons, and dangerous industrial chemicals like cyanide. However, most of these options proved either too difficult to obtain through legitimate means or left clear forensic traces that would immediately point to foul play during any medical examination or investigation. Alessandro ultimately decided on rodenticides as his method of choice. These products were easily purchasable over the counter at hardware stores and garden centers without raising any suspicion from staff or requiring special documentation. The accessibility and legal availability of these substances made them ideal for his purposes, as no one would question a routine purchase for pest control. His research revealed that certain types of rodenticides work slowly within the human body, causing internal bleeding, progressive weakness, and severe anemia. These symptoms could easily be mistaken for common pregnancy complications, providing perfect cover for his criminal intentions. The gradual onset would also make it difficult for medical professionals to immediately identify poisoning as the cause of illness. Beginning in early 2023, Alessandro started implementing his plan by adding small amounts of the poisonous substance to Julia's food and drinks. He carefully mixed the rodenticide into meals he prepared for her, and beverages she consumed regularly, ensuring she remained unaware of the contamination while maintaining his facade of a caring partner. Julia began experiencing concerning symptoms including constant fatigue, persistent dizziness, severe nausea, and sharp stomach pains that seemed to worsen over time. She attributed these symptoms to normal pregnancy discomfort, as many expectant mothers experience similar issues during their term. When friends and family expressed concern about her declining health, Julia explained she was feeling unwell but assured them it was typical pregnancy-related illness. Alessandro grew increasingly frustrated when the poison didn't work as quickly as he had anticipated from his research. Giulia's body was fighting back against the toxic substance, and her pregnancy remained strong despite months of systematic poisoning. This failure forced Alessandro to consider alternative methods to solve what he viewed as his problem, increasing both his desperation and anger as time passed without achieving his desired result. Algra began growing suspicious of inconsistencies in Alessandro's stories about his past relationships and current living situation. His explanations about Giulia often contained contradictory details that didn't align with previous conversations, creating doubt about the truthfulness of his claims regarding their supposedly finished relationship. Her doubts intensified significantly when she accidentally discovered recent photos of Alessandro with Giulia on his phone. The images clearly showed them as an active, romantic couple rather than the finished relationship Alessandro had consistently described to her. The photos depicted intimate moments and recent dates that directly contradicted his narrative about Giulia being unable to accept their breakup. Algra began carefully observing Alessandro's behavior patterns, noting discrepancies between his claimed work schedule and his actual availability. She noticed unexplained absences during times when he said he would be working, and his explanations for these gaps became increasingly implausible and elaborate as she pressed for details. When Algra finally confronted Alessandro about the photos she had discovered, he immediately claimed that Giulia was unable to accept their breakup and was posting old pictures on social media to cause him emotional distress and manipulate his current relationships. He presented this explanation with confidence, attempting to position himself as a victim of Giulia's alleged harassment. As Algra pressed for more specific details about the timeline and circumstances, Alessandro's explanations became increasingly unbelievable and contradictory. In a desperate attempt to maintain his deception, he eventually claimed that Giulia had fabricated her entire pregnancy to manipulate him into returning to their relationship. To support this outrageous claim, Alessandro created a fake DNA test. He found a legitimate DNA test document online and modified it using basic editing software, changing the results to show he was not the father of Giulia's baby. He presented this falsified document to Algra as proof of his innocence and Giulia's deception. However, Algra's suspicions had grown too strong to be satisfied by Alessandro's increasingly elaborate lies. She decided to investigate the situation independently by using Alessandro's phone to contact Giulia directly, arranging a meeting without Alessandro's knowledge. The two women met at Algra's hotel workplace, where they shared their experiences and systematically pieced together the full extent of Alessandro's deception. During their conversation, they discovered the complete scope of his lies, including his double life, the fake DNA test, and his manipulation of both women. Rather than viewing each other as enemies, Giulia and Algra recognized themselves as fellow victims caught in Alessandro's elaborate web of deceit. On May 28, 2023, Giulia returned home and immediately informed Alessandro that she knew about his double life, and their relationship was permanently over. She announced her intention to return to Naples with clear determination, making it absolutely clear she wanted no further contact with him once she departed. Her tone left no room for negotiation or discussion about reconciliation. Alessandro's initial response followed his established pattern of denial, followed by mounting anger. He accused Giulia of invading his privacy by investigating his personal life, and claimed she had no right to contact other people about their relationship. His defensive reaction revealed his desperation, as he realized the complete exposure of his carefully constructed deception. However, Giulia remained completely unmoved by his explanations and continued packing her belongings with unwavering resolve. She treated his protests with indifference, focusing entirely on her preparation to leave, while ignoring his increasingly frantic attempts to engage her in conversation or argument. Alessandro's desperation escalated dramatically, as he realized he had completely lost control of the situation that had defined his life for months. All his secrets were exposed, His carefully constructed image was shattered, and Julia's resolve to leave appeared absolutely unshakable. His entire world was collapsing around him, and his sense of power and control had evaporated entirely. An intense argument followed, with Alessandro making increasingly desperate attempts to convince Julia to reconsider her decision. He alternated between pleading, threatening, and trying to manipulate her emotions, but Julia maintained her silence and continued preparing to leave. Her complete indifference to his words intensified his frustration and rage. When Alessandro finally comprehended that Julia's decision was final and irreversible, he lost all control of his accumulated rage and desperation. In a moment of explosive violence, he grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter and attacked Julia, who was defenseless against the sudden assault. The attack was brutal, with Julia suffering 37 stab wounds while 7 months pregnant. She was unable to defend herself against Alessandro's violent rage, and the attack continued until she succumbed to her injuries. After the violence ended, Alessandro stood over Julia's body, finally comprehending the magnitude of what he had done. His mind immediately shifted to self-preservation, as he realized he needed to dispose of evidence and create a plausible cover story to avoid detection and prosecution. His first attempt at concealment involved dragging Julia's body to the bathroom, covering it with alcohol and setting it on fire, hoping to destroy forensic evidence. When this method failed to completely eliminate the remains, Alessandro began the lengthy process of cleaning blood from floors, walls, and furniture, though stains remained visible throughout the apartment despite his efforts. Following Julia's murder, Alessandro began implementing a plan to conceal his crime and create a believable alternative narrative. With Julia's body still in the bathroom, he focused on making her disappearance appear voluntary rather than the result of violence. Using Julia's phone, Alessandro sent text messages to her family and friends, carefully crafting brief and vague messages that suggested she needed time alone and had decided to leave temporarily. The messages were intentionally ambiguous to avoid raising immediate suspicion while providing him with crucial time to further develop his cover story and dispose of evidence. Within hours of committing the murder, Alessandro made the calculated decision to report Julia as missing to police himself. He reasoned that someone would eventually contact authorities when Julia failed to respond to communications, and he wanted to control the narrative from the very beginning of any official investigation. His official story was straightforward and carefully rehearsed. Alessandro told investigators that Julia had left the house after an argument and never returned home. He provided specific details designed to support his version of events, claiming that Julia had taken her personal items, passport, and money with her, suggesting she had departed voluntarily for another city or location. However, Alessandro's demeanor during initial police interviews immediately raised suspicions among experienced investigators. His excessive confidence, calculated responses, and apparent anticipation of certain questions contrasted sharply with the genuine distress displayed by Julia's family and friends, who were desperately seeking information about her whereabouts. While police conducted their search for Julia, Alessandro continued working to dispose of physical evidence that could link him to her disappearance. He wrapped Julia's remains in plastic and moved them to various locations within their building. First to the garage, then to the basement, then back to the garage as he struggled to find a permanent disposal method. Each movement created additional forensic evidence and increased his risk of detection, though Alessandro remained convinced that his cover-up efforts would be sufficient to avoid detection and maintain his deception indefinitely. Investigators systematically began unraveling Alessandro's deception through careful forensic analysis and behavioral observation. The first major breakthrough came when forensic experts discovered blood traces in Alessandro's car, despite his thorough attempts to clean the vehicle after moving Julia's body. Advanced forensic technology allowed detectives to identify the blood as belonging to Julia, immediately contradicting Alessandro's claim that she had left their home voluntarily. This physical evidence provided the first concrete proof that something violent had occurred, rather than the voluntary departure Alessandro had described to authorities. Additional blood evidence was discovered in the apartment building's common areas. Light red stains on stairs and hallways initially appeared to be dust or spilled liquid, but chemical analysis revealed them to be partially cleaned blood traces that Alessandro had missed during his hasty cleanup efforts. Investigators also noted Alessandro's unusual behavior patterns that differed significantly from typical responses of concerned partners in missing person cases. He showed no genuine worry about Giulia's welfare, made no efforts to contact her family for assistance in searching for her, and took no steps to publicize her disappearance beyond filing the mandatory missing person report. The investigation's most significant breakthrough came from analyzing Alessandro's electronic devices. Forensic examination of his computer, phone, and tablet revealed extensive search histories from months before Giulia's disappearance, showing detailed research into poisons, their effects on the human body, and methods of harming people without detection. Some searches even investigated why certain poisons might not work as expected, directly correlating with his failed attempts to poison Giulia. The fake DNA test Alessandro had shown to Algra provided additional crucial evidence of his deceptive nature. Forensic analysis proved the document had been digitally modified and traced the original file to a website that allowed users to alter medical records for fraudulent purposes. As evidence mounted systematically, investigators applied increasing pressure during interrogations, presenting each piece of contradictory evidence methodically. They showed Alessandro photographs of bloodstains, confronted him with his incriminating search history, and brought in witnesses who had heard shouting and loud noises from the apartment. Surveillance footage from the days following Giulia's disappearance showed Alessandro making multiple trips to the garage carrying bags and returning without them. This combination of physical evidence, digital forensics, and behavioral analysis created an overwhelming case that Alessandro could no longer deny. On June 1, 2023, following Alessandro's confession under mounting evidence, police found Giulia's remains in an overgrown area near Sinago. Forensic analysis confirmed the body had been burned in an incomplete attempt to destroy evidence, though investigators were able to determine the cause of death and establish definitive proof of Alessandro's guilt. The case shocked Italy and became another painful reminder of the ongoing problem of violence against women in a country where such crimes have been a persistent societal issue. News coverage of Giulia's murder sparked widespread public outrage and calls for systematic changes to prevent similar tragedies. Protests erupted across the country following Alessandro's arrest, with women taking to the streets demanding harsher penalties for crimes involving domestic violence and manipulation. Memorial marches were held in Milan, Naples, Rome, and other major cities, with participants calling for legislative changes to better protect vulnerable individuals from predatory behavior. Giulia's sister, Carla Tremonano, spoke at one of these protests, urging lawmakers to address the alarming number of cases where real consequences don't occur until it's too late. Her emotional testimony highlighted the need for earlier intervention and stronger legal protections for women in dangerous relationships. Psychological evaluation of Alessandro revealed strong narcissistic traits and a complete lack of empathy, according to court-appointed psychiatrists. His behavior during interrogations and court proceedings demonstrated deep self-centeredness and inability to consider others' feelings or experiences beyond his own interests. Alessandro's conviction came with a sentence of life in prison for first-degree murder, with aggravating factors, including the cruelty of the crime, prolonged emotional abuse of the victim, and deliberate destruction of evidence. Algra cooperated fully with the investigation, providing crucial testimony about Alessandro's deceptions and the fake DNA test. After the trial concluded, she avoided media attention and reportedly left Milan to start over in another city. Giulia's story became a catalyst for ongoing discussions about domestic violence prevention and protection of vulnerable individuals, ensuring that her tragic death contributed to efforts preventing similar future tragedies.